everyone, this is OC from Digital Adventures. Today we're going to do a flying fish game, and what that means is we're going to have a fish go up and down while it tries to avoid shark enemies. So let me show you how it works. We're going to press the green flag, and then we're going to press our space bar, hit the bottom of the screen, we dive. Press our space bar, we go up, we see the sharks coming, we go up and down, up and down, up and down, up, we get hit by a shark. Let me show you how it works. So what we're going to do is we're going to go inside here and we're going to create some code. The first thing that we want to do is we want to go to events and we want to get a when green flag clicked. The next thing that we want to do is we want to go to motion and we want to get a point in direction. What that's going to do with this code inside the fish is it's going to make sure that it's pointing towards the enemies as they're coming. The next thing that we're going to do is we want to make sure that our fish always starts in the same position. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a go to XY block. And what we're going to do is we're going to position it at -200, which is the left side of the screen on X, and we're going to make Y to be at 0. The next thing that we want to do is we want to create a variable called Y speed. And we're going to now take that variable and we're going to make sure that we set it at 0 to start our game. So we're going to say Y speed is going to begin at 0. Then the next thing that we want to do is we want to go inside our control block and we want to get a forever loop. Inside that forever loop, what we're going to do is we're going to place an if then else block. And what that's going to do is right now we're trying to say that as we're pushing our spacebar, we want to be able to have the fish go up and down as though it looks like it's going up at an angle and then it's going to drop down. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to put inside a sensing block and we're going to look for any time the user is pressing the spacebar. That's how we're going to activate our movement. The next thing that we want to do is we want to go back to variables and we want to set that we want to change that Y speed variable. So for the first movement, we're going to change it by 1. And then for the second movement, what we're going to do is we're going to change that Y speed variable by a -0.5. The next thing that we have to do is we want to make sure that we capture that up and down movement. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in motion and we're going to get a turn counterclockwise block. And we're going to make that to be about 2 degrees. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get a turn clockwise block, and we're going to make that to be a turn of a 1 degree. And then finally what we're going to do is we want to make sure that we change the Y by Y speed every time. And what that is going to do is that's going to allow us to keep track of that movement. So let's test out and see how this works. So now what we see is that we can make the fish go up and down. But what you'll notice is that when we hit a shark, nothing happens. Or if we go all the way to the bottom of the screen, we don't die. So let's stop this and let's actually figure out how we're going to add some additional code to make sure that we get our movement. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our events block. We're going to get another when green flag clicked. And what we're going to do is then inside of that, we're going to get a forever block. And then we're going to do 3 conditional statements. We're going to have one for the top of the screen, one for the bottom of the screen, and one for when it hits the shark. So we're going to do one if then, and then we're going to put another if then, and then we're going to put another if then. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look for the operators block. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for a greater than block. And we're going to put that at the very top. And the thing that we're looking for there is we want to know when is our Y position greater than 170. So we're going to look for Y position. We're going to grab that and we're going to put it in there and we're going to change it to 170. That's the very top of the screen. And what we want to happen is when we get a Y position at greater than 170, we basically want the game to be over. So we're going to put that in there as what happens when we get a Y position greater than 170. Now we're going to go back to the operators and we're going to get a less than. What we're going to do is we're going to change that to a -170, and this is the bottom of the screen. And so then we're going to go back to motion and we're going to look for that Y position again. Similar to the last time, what we're going to do is we want to make sure that once the Y position is less than a -170, the game is over. So we're going to put that in there. a stop all. And then the final thing that we want to do is we want to sense whether or not our fish is touching the shark. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a sensing block, and we're going to say if it's touching that shark, what we're going to do is we also want to stop the game. So this gives us our 3 boundary conditions. 170 stop, negative 170 stop, and if it hits a shark, stop. So let's see if this works now. So we're pressing our button. We have our controls that go up and down. So let's hit the top, up, it stops. Let's fall to the bottom, it stops. And then let's see what happens when we hit a shark. Great. Now we have everything coded for our fish. Now we're going to head over to the shark and make the code for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this existing code in here, and we're going to program the shark. Similar to before, what we're going to do is we're going to grab an event block, and we're going to say when green flag clicked. The first thing that we want to do when the green flag is clicked is we want to hide that shark clone. So we hide it, and that allows us to start creating these clones and only to do something when we tell it to do something. So what we're going to do next is we're going to get a control block, and we're going to get a forever loop. And what this is going to do is it's going to say for the entire period of the game until something happens that interrupts that forever, we're going to create clones. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go into our wait block, and we want these clones to be created every 5 seconds. That just determines the frequency of when these clones are created. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the very bottom, and we're going to say create a clone of myself. Nothing's going to show up right now when we hit the green flag, but like if we did, what you would see is that every half of a second a new clone is going to be created. But we have to tell that clone what to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to get another block that's going to tell it what to do, and it says when I start as a clone. The first thing that we want to do is we want to be able to see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a show block, and we're going to say when I start as a clone, show up. The next thing that we want to do is we want to maintain the positionality. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a go to XY block. With this block, what we want these shark clones is we want them to show up on the right-hand side of the screen. So the first block that we're going to say is X at 240. That means it's going to show up on the far right-hand side of that screen. Now, if we just did 240 and Y, that means that all the sharks are going to come out at the same place. We don't want to do that. We want to be a little more interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a pick random block. And what we want to do is be able to vary that Y between negative 180 and 180. That's roughly the range of the Y axis. So what we're going to do is going to say negative 180, and we're going to change that to positive 180. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get a repeat until block. And what that repeat until block is going to say is that as the shark goes from the right-hand side to the left-hand side of the screen, we're going to have it move. And so the way that we're going to do that is we need to be able to monitor the position of it. So we're going to get another operator block, and this is going to be a less than block. And we're going to say that whenever this is less than 220, we want a certain action to be taken. And so we're going to grab a motion block, and we're going to keep track of that X position. The thing that we want it to do as it's going from the right hand to the left hand side of the screen is we want it to move. Because it's going this way, it's going to be a negative 3 steps. If we wanted it going that way, it would be a positive 3 steps, but then we would never be able to see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a move, which is in the motion. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this move a negative 3 steps. And then what we want to do is once it's reached the end of the screen, once it gets to negative 220, it's off the screen. What we want to do is we want to get rid of that clone because we don't just want a bunch of clones sort of sitting out there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into control. We're going to grab a delete this clone block. And so now what's going to happen is our shark is going to create it's going to spawn a bunch of clones. They're going to start at the right-hand side of the screen randomly in the Y, and they're going to go 3 steps at a time across the screen until they either hit the fish or they're gone. So let's see what that looks like. So we're going up and down. You see the sharks are cloning themselves and they're coming at us. And so we're trying to avoid them. One more time to see what that looks like. Let's do this on the big screen so we can see what our completed game looks like. So we're moving the fish up and down. The sharks are coming at us. They're cloning every half of a second, and we're avoiding them thus far. Awesome. Great game. We got our fish coded. We got our shark coded. That's another great Let's Build episode here at Digital Adventures. I'm OC. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for our next features that are focused on teaching folks how to code, teaching folks how Scratch works, and really understanding computational thinking. Thank you all.